Oh, well, okay. Um, this is obviously an important lesson, to say the least. Light and joy and peace abide in me. Lesson number 93 of the Workbook of A Course in Miracles. You think you're the home of evil and darkness and sin. And there are times, I'm sure if you're like me, that you feel that way. Um, and don't quite know what to do about it, but certainly bring upon yourself, as I bring upon myself, situations that convince me of my own thinking, which is why there's a part of this lesson that seems really crucial to me personally, and I think it's important for people to realize that this is where you have to take your thoughts and look at your thoughts in the light of reality, and not in the light or the dark light that you're getting in your own reflection, or perhaps others seem to be getting in their reflection of you. So it says here, let me just read part of it. I mean, this is really an incredible lesson. And one, as he says, you need to repeat this to yourself a million times. I need to repeat this to myself today a billion times, if possible, and never lose sight of it. And always have it there as a tool, as a way of remembering in moments when perhaps we're all tempted to forget because it doesn't seem to be the truth, in the sense that we would like it to be so obvious to ourselves and to others. You think you are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. You think if anyone could see the truth about you, he would be repelled, recoiling from you as if from a poisonous snake. And I guess what happens, I think what happens is, when that occurs, when people are repelled, when people recoil, it verifies our own image, it verifies the image that we've made as being evil and dark. And in a sense, we're always looking for validation and verification of ourselves, but when we look at the image, and we look at both ourselves as an image and other images that get presented to us, when we look at those, it's difficult to recognize at times that light and joy and peace abide in me. One of the things that's been interesting for me since, actually it goes way back. This goes way back, and I remember there was an incident. There was an incident it was in college. When I was going to college, I was in an altered state, so to speak, and there was a young man in a wheelchair, and he apparently, I don't know what he had because I didn't stop and talk to anybody. When I later became a caseworker, he seemed to have a condition. It could have been multiple sclerosis, and there's this spastic condition that goes with it, where your limbs get all sort of twisted and lose their mobility, and so you seem to be contorted into strange positions. and there was this young man in a wheelchair, and I took a look at him, and I just looked at him, and I could see he was all contorted. And I looked at him, and I could see the only reason for the contortions were thoughts in his mind that were showing him was guilty. I could see that an instant of him knowing himself as innocent would allow all the contortions to be removed physically from his body. I could just see that it was only guilt that was keeping him in this condition. And at the time, I had no training in anything whatsoever. It was this odd moment that I could see it. I could see it so clearly. Later on, when I went through my initial phase of awakening and revelation, what began from the innocence I experienced, and it wasn't just a personal innocence, it was an experience of the totality of the innocence of everything created as whole and perfect with God. I can see that bright spot. I saw that incredible brightness and truth to the fact that we were all innocent, and that the illusion was merely that, had nothing to do with what we are in reality. And after that, it became, easier, let's say, to recognize that innocence when I would meet others. I could look into their eye and see past what they were thinking about themselves. And I could see the purity and innocence that existed behind the image that they were using to present themselves as. And you sort of fall in love with that innocence. When you see it, it evokes love. It evokes a recognition. And what we're looking for today is the ability to look at ourselves with that innocence and then allow it to begin to generalize. Certainly in the world, we don't find much evidence of innocence, where people are always looking to affix guilt and blame, and thinking that if we could just find out who did what, then we could come to some sort of conclusion and weed things out. But it's so tangled here, like he's saying, recoil from you as if you were a poisonous snake. You think if what is true about you were revealed to you, you would be struck with horror so intense that you would rush to death by your own hand. Living on after seeing this being impossible. And these are beliefs so firmly fixed that it is difficult to help you see that they're based on nothing. That you've made mistakes is obvious. I mean, we've all made mistakes, and how could we not make mistakes as we tried to make our way through the world when we've had such a poor it's not even a poor self-image, it's an unreal image based on something that's not true. It's not poor, it's nothing. It's ultimately what this lesson is going to tell us. The image that we make of ourselves, the image that we think that would present this picture of art to us, is nothing. It doesn't exist in reality. It only exists within our own mind, because we accepted an error as truth, and then used everything, we used the error to build a condition that's untrue, because thinking the error is right, we would think that if we can build a condition on it, we would likewise be right. And the mistake that we made about ourselves is total. That you've made mistakes is obvious. That you have sought salvation in strange ways, have been deceived, deceiving and afraid of foolish, that you have been deceived, deceiving and afraid of foolish fantasies and savage dreams, and have bowed down to idols made of dust. All this is true by what you now believe, and this is what I wanted to get to. Today, we question this not from the point of view of what you think, but from a very different reference point, from which such idle thoughts are meaningless. These thoughts are not according to God's will. These weird beliefs He does not share with you. This is enough to prove that they are wrong, but you do not perceive this is so. I do not perceive this is so totally, wholly, fully, 100% of the time. When I stop and think about it, the reasonability is so pristine and true, based on the idea, on the fact that there was a point in time, and it goes on to say this, this is the nature, this is part of the nature of the revelatory experience that many of you have, and will continue to have. Now, the integration of that revelation is what we're after, so that it isn't just a momentary glimpse, but it's something that becomes fixed, so that we orient off of it, rather than orienting our life and our thinking based on the error that causes us to feel and think of how evil and dark we are. So today we question this not from the point of view of what you think, but from a very different reference point, from which such idle thoughts are meaningless. These thoughts are not according to God's will. God's will is eternal, it's whole and perfect. You are God's will. He created you to share that will, and in that sense you are the exact same as that will. You are whole, perfect, innocent. In a totality, there's no room for opposition in order to bounce your ideas off and get a reflection that isn't true, because it's all true. It's an altruism. God is all true, and so therefore are you. These thoughts are not according to God's will. These weird beliefs He doesn't share with you. And if God doesn't share them with you, they can have no reality. Which is why I guess we cast about in the world of space and time for looking for things that share these views with us to help us prove that we're true, because we think if we can prove ourselves, it's true that I'm evil and I'm dark and I'm full of sin, we'll feel better about ourselves, rather than just institutionalizing the evil, the darkness, and the sin, and trying to legislate how to things we can do to not experience it and to protect ourselves from the evil and darkness and sin of others. These weird beliefs He does not share with you. This is enough to prove that they are wrong. Why would you not be overjoyed to be assured that all evil that you think you did was never done? You may feel a little foolish. That may introduce a moment of feeling foolish, and just wanting to say, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I did this to myself, and I'm sorry that I seem to have forced that upon my brothers as well. None of it's true. Please forgive me. Why would you not be overjoyed to be assured that all the evil that you think you did was never done, that all your sins are nothing, that you are pure and holy as you were created, and that light and joy, peace abide in you? Now, this is an important line. Your image of yourself cannot withstand the will of God. You think that this is death, but it is life. You think you are destroyed, but you're saved. Now, there's no better description in such a shortened, condensed form as what you discover in the moment of revelation. Unfortunately, that moment is only temporary. It's a temporary moment where you experience the total release from the image, from all the image thought, from all, and for the exact reason, because the image cannot withstand the will of God, and the will of God being all there is when you are with God, and it's you and Him, and He looks upon you, and there's a bit of anthropomorphism in this, but when you are finally allow yourself to let God look upon you, and you see yourself through His eyes, the image has no place in that experience whatsoever. And in that experience, it does not exist and has never been true, never will be true, never was true in the past. It's the eternal. It's witness, experience of our own true eternal nature. I think once you've seen that, you become less and less tolerant for your own lack of innocence. Become less and less tolerant within yourself. And in a sense, that could cause you to be harder on yourself. When really you're asked to be easier and gentle with yourself. Your image of yourself cannot withstand the will of God. You think that this is death because the ego is the idea of termination, beginning and endings. So you think when you see something that wipes out the ability for the image to be true in any regard, the image itself is going to undergo an experience and no longer be living, and because you've identified yourself with the image rather than the reality of your own eternal innocence and the reality that that innocence exists as a condition of love without ending, without opposition. It feels like death. Something's died. Something has terminated. Your ability to tolerate your own lack of innocence has been born. And now, praise the Lord, thank God we have something such as A Course in Miracles to help us, see our way out of the dilemma that we found ourselves in. Self you made is not the Son of God. Therefore, the self does not exist. And anything it seems to do and think means nothing. It's neither bad nor good. How could something that doesn't exist be either bad nor good? It's non-existing. It's meaningless. And it harkens back to the earlier lessons. We have to begin to stop thinking in terms of bad and good and just what's meaningless and what's meaningful. And only the meaningful is worthy of the Son of God that you are. So our time is running out this morning. So light and joy and peace abide in me. If they abide in me, they abide in you. And some way, through the miracle, we're given the ability to share that with our brother. And if there's anything I've ever wanted to share with my brother, was the certainty of our innocence and the fact that we are love and that there is only love. And being a novice at this, perhaps I've made mistakes in how I've gone about it. And yet the truth is that's all that's ever true, all that's ever been true, and all I would ever want you to know about yourself as being true now.